Claire, she was a naughty little girl. I think that, Claire. You're not a naughty little girl.
Oh, of course not.
Aren't you?
No.
You've got a mischievous look about you today. What have you been up to?
Well,
confess to Uncle Russ. Come on.
Well, yeah. I did have a lovely time down in Melbourne. Yeah. Remember I said on the radio last week that they said it was going to be raining for 5 days? Yeah. It was perfect winter weather.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
They had a good time.
Oh, amazing.
That's why you got that look on your face.
It was so good. Oh, look, we had Dr. Flavio, the 33-year-old endocrinologist from Brazil. He was fantastic. He has done all sorts of study to do with testosterone, prostate issues, cancer, that sort of thing in men. And we had Dr. Tanya Dempsey. She was talking about mast cell activation syndrome, which we're going to chat about today. One of the ladies who I decided I want to be when I grow up is a lady called Dr. Pam Peake, and she's over 50. You know, the Masters Triathlon, so you have to be over 50 to compete. She's one of those chicky babes, and she spoke, once again, interesting how I went down there. She was talking about how trauma affects your genes and affects it for many generations, exactly what we've been chatting about the last few weeks. So she talked about the trials and how they discovered all this and what they've done with the pool.
Doesn't discolour your genes or anything, does it?
Well, it does.
Fade your genes?
No, but it does make the little mice's genes go from yellow to brown.
Oh, really? Yellow to brown? Well,
yeah.
You look really excited today, and as I said, you must have had a good weekend.
I had a great weekend.
Yeah, you look full of exuberance, and so tell us what you learned.
Actually, I might start with Dr. Flavio, since I just excited myself just thinking about him. No, honestly, he was
33, handsome, tall.
He was a totally buff dude.
I can see that.
And you know the nice thing about he's a classic Doogie Howser.
Yeah.
So he was 16 when he started studying going into medical school. So he was just one of these bright boys. He had chronic fatigue and was obese throughout his childhood. And he didn't know what was wrong. Nothing in the tests ever showed up in anything. Everyone always said, well, he must be lazy. And so he ended up deciding, because obviously that's not that long ago for him, he decided that he was going to become an endocrinologist and work out what the heck was going on with it, because he knew that it wasn't just him, that there was a lot of this going on with boys his age.
Was he a local fellow? Is he
Brazil? No, he's from Brazil. Yeah, he speaks Portuguese and he dances pretty well. But anyway, so he.
I hope Mr. Guy's not listening to this.
So what was really cool? I did get a selfie with him. But anyway, one of the things that he did. Let's talk prostate for a sec.
Okay.
So with prostates, there's been lots of, in the natural therapies world at least, I'm not sure what medically they sort of suspect causes cancer, but basically I think testosterone, no surprise, has always been linked with prostate cancer. Now, 2 different researchers over the weekend have done 2 different lots of studies which have been done several times, so they keep finding the same results. Firstly, that testosterone does not cause cancer. So that is a nice thing to sort of get proven from 2 different camps. And basically what they did, these little agouti mice, so there's a particular gene in mice called agouti, and if they mess it around too much, these poor little mice, they're the perfect mice to do just about anything awful to in tests. So these agouti mice are just a race of mice that every scientist wants to get their hands on. So what they did, firstly, was gave these little mice lots of testosterone to see whether or not it would cause prostate cancer. And then they didn't just do lots, they did it in the amounts that people, particularly boys, because girls, you know, we all make estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which is actually part of this story. So they basically gave the approximate amounts that humans would be getting at certain ages, because there's different ages, there's peaks and troughs with our hormones. Once again, they really didn't find that testosterone alone caused cancer in prostates, which is sort of interesting. So then what they did, because they know it's been known for a long time that there are hormone disruptors in our environment, so things like plastics, BPAs, you know, the bisphenol A, so everything's BPA-free these days. Thing people often don't know is that there's many other sorts of plastics, and pretty much plastic is bad. Go do something else if you've got any option. Anyway, so what they did was gave the little mice the approximate amount of BPAs that we have, once again, in our bodies these days, just as a general rule, but did it during the very specific time when the mother mices were pregnant, when the prostates were growing in the baby mice in the womb. Right?
Okay.
And what they're finding is that just about every boy born since 1970 will have BPA in their prostates.
Okay.
Now, for men, once again, this is something I didn't know. Don't know whether you knew. It'd be interesting to see what you know about testosterone. Men are predominantly testosterone driven until they're about 40.
Right.
Then it's a downhill slide and the major hormone becomes estradiol.
Right.
So basically estradiol is one of the estrogens, and it's once estradiol starts kicking in that kicks the BPA into action and created the prostate cancer in 38 to 40% of these little mice in every study they did.
Interesting. Yeah.
So because this wasn't believed by the equivalent of, I don't know, whether it's the TGA or the AMA, whatever it is in Brazil and whatever it is in America, both times they had to prove their results again, and they've basically now done it several times in 2 different countries where they found exactly the same results, which is sort of cool.
Right.
The scary thing is, of course, there's not a lot you can do about a lot of endocrine disruptors. We are breathing these things in every day of our life. They're estimating we're breathing in something like 10,000 chemicals a day. So what we can do, of course, is reduce our load. That's really what we can do. Choose glass when we've got the option. Take your keep cups to your coffee shop to get your coffee instead of buying it out of polystyrene or paper cups. Even the paper cups, they're lined with plastic on the inside. So and then we have the little plastic things on top. We drink through them. We are taking BPA's plastics into our body all day, every day. These studies really show that BPAs are not inert. They don't not cause problems. Another little factoid that I found out over the weekend, this was pretty funny actually. Well, not that funny. But back in the 1920s, BPA, so bisphenol A, I hope people know what that is. It's something that if you've bought anything for your kids in the last 20 years, it's one of their big advertising things saying BPA free, because BPA has been known to be an endocrine disruptor, which means it affects your hormones. The more of them we have in our body, the more they bind to our estrogen or testosterone receptor sites on the cell walls. But what was known back in the 1920s was that BPA was an estrogenic substance. Okay. So they knew, you know how people say that soy is estrogenic. Mm-hmm. You know, you have too much soy, and it's particularly genetically modified soy. But they know that if we have too much soy, stuff can happen. So people, particularly who are having estrogenic issues, are often told to go off soy. Now, back in the 20s, they knew that BPA was an estrogenic substance. It was the first hormone given to women for 20 years.
Okay.
So for 20 years, women were being given this. And once again, because now they know what they know about genes going down 7 generations through the epigenetics, you know, we now know that may be affecting people today.
Can we just explain to the listeners just a little bit more about BPA? Is it a substance? Is it a chemical? Where does it actually form from?
Okay, so it's a man-made substance, and it is basically a plastic.
A plastic?
Yep,
Right.
But it can be, you know, the molecule of BPA is so tiny that it can attach to our cell walls. So most people who know about BPA only have ever heard of it in relation to plastics. So it's in everything. Every time you're using Glad Wrap, every time you're putting something, and once again, there's not only BPAs, there are BP,
You said women
many letters. They were being given it as a hormone.
As a hormone, so it was in a fluid, like an injection or a tablet form?
I don't know how they gave it. I certainly know that the pill going back in the 1960s was about 40 times the dose of what they do now, and that was estradiol. So, but before estradiol was available, they gave BPA.
Yeah, I'm just sort of trying to find the origins of it. Does it come out of the ground? Is it just
No, it's man-made. No, it's definitely man-made.
Okay.
And it's like any chemical. So if they can find any chemical, and this is how chemotherapy, radiation, it's how any drug works, they find a chemical that they know makes a change in your body, and they synthesize it to make into, it doesn't matter whether it's pills or injections or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of one thing. The other thing that Dr. Flavio was talking about was the fact that testosterone, if it's too low in men, it is absolutely one of these things linked in with our lowering of muscle mass, our lowered libido, our sex drive, our lowered. But the muscle mass isn't a small thing to think about. If you imagine from the time we're 40, we're only making 5 to 6% less per decade, so it's not a massive amount. But nonetheless, that's when we sort of notice, you know, dudes coming in and sort of saying, "Hey, I've got this going on," but really linked in with chronic fatigue in males where they just can't, you know, get themselves up out of bed.
And while you're doing all this, I'm looking through my song list and thinking, what can I do to set this girl up? Play a Flavio.
I know.
Flavio flavoured type song. Madonna, it's 19 past 11, and we'll play a song. We'll play this one for Flavio. Actually, we'll play it for you from Flavio.
Excellent.
Alrighty, we'll be back in just a moment. You're with Russ and Madonna.